Today, we pay a virtual visit to the enchanting Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, where we meet and engage with one of its illustrious sons, Richie Bansraj, in a much anticipated conversation. More about that in a minute. First of all, hi and a hearty welcome to everyone tuning in to today's podcast. We do appreciate you taking the time to do so. And for the next 30 to 45 minutes or so, our amazing guest, Richie Bansraj, delves into, among other things, his critical work to the vulnerable and disenfranchised for his advocacy and support of same. My name is Dipchand Ramcharitar. I'm the Outreach and Development Coordinator at Voice of Men 360. Voice of Men 360 is a non-profit organization based in London, Ontario, Canada, primarily focused on uplifting and advocating for men and boys, though we also reach out to other demographics as best we can. Voice of Men 360 is also part of International Men's Day, founded more than 20 years ago, and providing similar services for men and boys in over 90 countries. This is Open Up. It's our 193rd episode. It's a weekly podcast produced and hosted by Voice of Men 360, where we engage with influential leaders and critical thinkers to address key issues with the intent of positively impacting society, with the emphasis on supporting men and boys. Now, usually our programs are at 7 p.m. Eastern on Sundays. However, due to extenuating circumstances, we sometimes have it on live at different times. For example, this is one of those situations. So we're happy that you're here with us. Now, we would get to Richie in a second. First of all, let's take a look at our disclaimer. We would like to remind you that Voice of Men 360's mission is always delivered with good faith towards peaceful harmony. The views and opinions expressed in today's episode are those of our speakers and do not necessarily represent Voice of Men 360. Our organization engages in discussion forums to offer inspiration and create awareness of the issues of men who wish to overcome their life challenges. We are not providing medical or therapeutic advice. Should you require that type of assistance, we recommend you contact a medical professional immediately. If you have any questions or concerns about today's episode or any Voice of Men 360 content, please email us at info@voiceofmen360.org. Now on with the show. And again, our special guest today, Richie Bansraj from Trinidad and Tobago. Richie, can you take a minute to briefly introduce yourself, and then we'll get on to some questions. Go ahead, Richie.
Sure. Well, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good night, wherever you are looking at this. So, my name is Richie Bansraj. I'm a gender and youth development advocate, a gender and youth development specialist, whatever you want to call it. But particularly, I focus on youth development. And right now, I focus on a lot of men's rights, men's issues, and stuff like that. My background is in sociology. I studied that at my bachelor's and also at my master's, and I have been in the government in Trinidad and Tobago for, and I don't want, I don't even feel, it's too long, for like 11 years now, and I getting gray hairs and everything now because of it, but
join the club.
Too long.
Yeah, so thank you for your introduction, Richie. It's a pleasure having you here, and we're looking forward to a very enthusiastic exchange, so informative at the same time. So can you tell us what got you interested in the current path you've undertaken? And you just mentioned what your work is about. So if you could expand a little more,
Sure.
nothing major, just a little more on what your work involves.
Sure. Well, first of all, I started studying sociology, right? I didn't really like a lot of young people. I just did it. I just did it because it was something to do. But then I realized that from being placed in a on-the-job training, kind of like an internship in Trinidad, and I worked in social development. I realized that social development in itself now was only giving money to people to help them through their issues, and they weren't actually giving them training to actually alleviate, remove them from that situation of poverty, encourage actual social development. I was just giving these people grants. And for me, that wasn't progress. And I decided to do more research into because sociology is study of peoples and culture. So I
Right.
decided to do more research into it. And I realized I could holistically develop society even better by actually doing more qualitative input and also qualitative research to see what the needs of people are in society. And when I started to do that, I realized that youth are very vulnerable in Trinidad and Tobago, particularly the young men and boys are very vulnerable. The crime in Trinidad and Tobago is a big issue, and that is one of the major things that triggered me into continuing my studies because I believe that I could cause a snowball effect or a butterfly effect where me saying some things to the youth now, doing some work with the youth now could have a long-term impact on positive youth development and make them better adults, reduce crime, and have Trinidad and Tobago as a more safer place to be in and promote the good about Trinidad and Tobago in general. So my
Right.
passion is gender development, child development, and youth development. Those are my three main pillars in life. And all of those pillars are tied around one thing: social, holistic social development, which is actual real social safety nets for people, particularly men and boys.
Right. So again, your work obviously is critical, and I like your approach. It's proactive, and it's starting from the youth because I mean, obviously, if there are men out there that needs help, that need help, obviously we would want to address that. However,
Mhm.
if you could nip stuff in the bud, the old saying about prevention is better than cure. So if you can nip stuff in the bud, fantastic. So a child, I guess, whole future is contingent on his or her formative years and how that turns out. So it's important to get to them as early as possible. As you just mentioned, there are severe crime and situations in Trinidad where men and boys are severely affected. So, on that note, what are some of the pressing issues facing men and boys today, from personal growth, both physically and mentally, to their social and communal rather interactions?
There are a lot. If I were to explain all of the issues that are faced by men and boys in society, in Trinidad and Tobago society, in the region, because a lot of the similarities that we face, a lot of the issues that we face here in the Caribbean, in Trinidad, are faced by the men and boys in the entire Caribbean. From me communicating with persons in the region, because I'm the Caribbean ambassador for the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Men and Boys. That is the 31st of January every year. It's a new day. So what we're trying to do is show that men and boys are vulnerable. Now, you were mentioning to me, like, what are some of the real core issues? Suicide, depression, anxiety, crime, the the involvement of crime. Men and boys are the victims of crimes, and they're the ones who are also committing the crimes. So we need to figure out why they are committing the crimes, and we need to figure out how to get them removed from there. So the general idea is, let me get them involved in sport. Let me get the boys involved in sport. That is one way. We live in 2025. We have multiple ways that we could get young persons, young men especially, away from crime and wanting to commit crime. Now, as a sociologist, everything is linked to power. And the masculine thing is to always want more power. So in reality, we have to try to manage that ideology of power. And we have to try to bring another P. So that is one P, power. Try to
Right.
bring another P into play. Peace. So
Peace.
yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, there's certainly, I would say, and obviously, I don't mean to discourage you. I don't think you will be, anyways. I'm sure you're aware that you have your work cut out for you, but
Yes. Hmm.
taking it, boldly, stepping forward, and taking it, as it is. Take, as I say, take the tiger by the tail. Take it on headlong, and I guess that's the best way to approach something, is to confront it. So good on you, and I'm sure you will do well. Now, as we're on that subject of male and masculinity, how do you think societal misconceptions about masculinity contribute to the challenges that men and boys face? Everything from mental health struggles to financial independence to their place in society.
So that is a major issue. Thank you so much for that question again, because that links to the patriarchy. A lot of people don't understand. When I go to schools and all of these things, they don't understand what the patriarchy is when I define it, when I say that this is a thing, right? But then when they hear me explain the definition of what it is when men are in power, positions of power and everything, but men are also men putting down other men, especially the older men putting down younger men in society, and also the masculine ideals. A man should be stoic, a man should be the breadwinner. So, what if you are a guy and you can't make money? You don't have a car in Trinidad and Tobago. Is seen that if you don't have a car, you're not a man, you know. You're not a man. You're not gonna get no. You're not gonna get no gal. You're not gonna get no woman.
Yeah.
It's a big problem. So we need to find ways to. Well, now this is one of the hardest things to change. Culture is the hardest thing to change. It takes years to change culture, but we need to show that how these things, these masculine ideals, should not be ideals. It should not be ideals because the rules, the gender rules, are now swappable. A woman could be the breadwinner now, and that
Yes.
doesn't make you less of a man.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, this is the one of the major issues that I think what masculinity faces is that in a general context, very few men are at the top. Most men are either middle or bottom of the
Correct.
ladder.
Hmm.
They're into blue collar work and like everything else. But people focus on the few CEOs at the top,
Men
and,
just
and
put down men,
yeah,
literally.
and judge all men based on that, which is
Mhm.
horrendous. This is a horrendous way to go about it. Now, obviously, when it comes to top positions, I would rather go with merit. So if you're a female, male, if
Correct.
you're yellow, green, whatever color you may be, it should be based on your production potential and not on who you are. Because I don't know for other people, and this is a very controversial area, but I am not one of these identity politics person. I believe in merit.
Yes, same, same.
Good.
Competence is key, and it tends to Trinidad and Tobago tends to have a lot of the is not merit based, is a lot of nepotism based and
Yes.
cronyism, and we have been seeing that for years, and we need to find a change because what is happening is it causing discouragement of the youth getting more and more discouraged because they're saying, nah, it's only because you have links. Links meaning that you know someone
Yes. Yes.
to
I get
get the
you.
job. It was only
Yeah.
because he had links, that's why he get his big job. But in
Right.
reality, that is reality. It's
Yeah.
because people have links, they have
Yeah.
their friends in high positions.
Yeah. Sad but true.
Mhm.
So let's go into a more specific area. Your work also focuses on creating opportunities for disadvantaged groups. What specific initiatives or programs have you found to be effective in supporting men and boys from diverse backgrounds and marginalized communities?
Right. So I have worked in a community called the Beatum community in Trinidad and Tobago, right? Which is one of the communities that are very, they label it as one of the at risk. youth
Yes.
communities. And I don't even like that term at risk because that's a label in itself, right? And then if you label people, it creates a self-fulfilling prophecy that they have to behave a certain way, blah, 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 blah. But I worked in that community, and what I did, and I have done a few things in that community. I have done HIV and proper STI protection, like sexual health awareness, health and reproductive awareness. So I did that there with in collaboration with another young woman who does that in his space as well. And that has been impactful. They didn't even know how to use a condom. Young men didn't know how to use a condom. We need
Sad.
to show them how to use that because we have to understand that STIs are real, and also teenage pregnancy is real as well, right? So we need to teach them about how easy it is that this could happen. So that's one. Another thing was teaching them about being leaders within the community, not community leaders. In Trinidad, we tend to call them community leaders, and the community leaders are the gang leaders, so to speak, right? But we
Yes.
want them to be actual community leaders, like persons who are positively impacting the young people. So you could be a mentor, and you could be just 2, 3 years older than someone who's younger than you. You know, you don't need to be a real old man to be a mentor to a younger fella.
Good
So that's
point.
what I'm saying. I'm trying to let all the young people. So I did a program there. It's a beat 'em resilience program, and to I did sessions with the Beatam Police Youth Club to try to get these young men to be more empowered, and it is a constant thing that I have going. Also, the members of the police, the community police there, I work closely with them because we need to find ways. We need to firstly do needs assessment because what I noticed is that yes, I did the sexual and reproductive health sessions, seminars, but what I realized every time I do needs assessments in the BTM community, there are more and more new issues that arise. And I would not have thought of it. Like I can't just sit down and think of it. I need to do the assessments to find out the needs
Right.
assessments. So
Okay.
there's much more to be done in the BTM community. And this is one community here. I've done a lot in other communities and I've realized a lot of things that need to be done. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, it seems that's typical of a lot of other communities there. Unfortunately, I'm familiar with the Beatum area and
Mhm.
the negative connotations that go along with it. So good on you to do the work and put a positive outlook on things instead of this stigmatized way of thinking. Well, these people, they're this, that, or the other, which isn't very helpful for anybody. So on the path you're on there, good, keep on it, and I'm sure better things and would happen
There's
as a
plenty
result.
work, plenty work. And
Uh,
to introduce myself into that community is also interesting because you need gatekeepers.
yeah, absolutely. Now, in our previous conversation, which we had a couple days ago,
Mhm.
you highlighted a lack of social safety net for males in society. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that and how it actually impacts men and boys?
I love that question and I love that discussion. We had two the other
Yeah,
day. That was real good because I I kept seeing it like every when I was in social development, social welfare, and there are a lot of social safety nets for the women and girls actually, and the women who are single mothers. But what about the single fathers? When you're filling out the form is designed in such a way that only women could get the grants, get the public assistance grants.
yeah,
But however, that's just the money. We just talking about the money part of things. If you
yeah,
want men, if the general gender norm is for men to be the breadwinners of the household, what do we need for them? We need training for them. We
yeah,
need them to do training so they can become employed. If it is like uh technical vocational training, so they could do like mechanics and stuff like that, or if it's academic training or something. But they need that is the gap. The gap is some of them don't finish school. So how do we get them involved in some form of money making thing so that they can make money to fulfill the gender rule of being a man? Because we can't change the gender rules right now that every man can be a breadwinner. Every man wants to be a breadwinner in Trinidad and Tobago still. Most of them want to be a breadwinner still, right? So
Yeah.
in order to do that, we need to have the social safety net. The whole ministry needs to figure out what programs need to be there for the vulnerable men and boys. Because men, when they apply for the grant, I evaluated some. I evaluated some men for the grant, and then when I was going through it, I was like, bro, this not right. You are disabled, but not disabled enough. So he not disabled enough to receive a disability grant, but he disabled enough to not be able to work.
Exactly.
So what is there for this man?
Yeah.
He can still pick up a gun. I can tell you that he can pick up a gun, but we
Yeah.
want to avoid that. We want to give him something else to do because he's still capable, but not 100% capable like the average Trinidadian, right?
Right.
So we need to find a social safety net, which is training, development, and hold a man's hand throughout the process.
Yeah, because again, the thing with men are inherently stoic, and well, not only biological, it's cultural as well. Because you have to man up, take it on the chin. You got all
Big
these
man thing, big
big man.
man thing.
You can't very well show your emotions. Um, so that's one aspect of masculinity that is troublesome. Again, as you mentioned, as we had this conversation a few minutes ago, I've spoken to people from places as far as South Africa, Namibia, and all these other countries, and it seems that everything is sort of catered towards the female section of the public, and men sadly are lacking behind with no resources, no
Yeah.
facilities, no support. And obviously, I'm using that in a sort of a, you might say, hyperbolic term, but there is absolutely a situation that really needs addressing in terms of support, resources, etc. For men
Mental
and
health is
boys.
one. Mental
Yeah,
health is one. We know that mental health is a big issue with men. So where are these support systems for that? Where are what the government is really doing for men to prevent them from committing suicide? I just keep seeing the statistic is, and sorry for keep talking, but the statistic for men in committing suicide in Trinidad and Tobago between a 10-year period, right?
yeah,
2011 to 2021
yeah,
is 82% of these suicides were men
yeah.
and boys.
Yeah, well, it's alarming overall that the statistics for men committing suicide goes up 9 times the norm when they get a bad read in a divorce court,
Mm,
um, and that is where our next question leads to.
mm.
Are you familiar with the family court system and the seemingly insurmountable hurdles men face when it comes to issues such as child support, child custody, alimony, paternity fraud, and the unfavorable outcomes unjustified in too many cases that often lead to a marked increase in homelessness, addictions, and suicide for many a father out there. If not, given its critical nature, is this an area you are willing at least to explore?
No, that's a huge question. That's a
Yeah,
huge phrase, a huge question, everything, right?
yeah,
But the court system in general is run by robots? No,
pretty much.
it's run by people. It's not run by artificial intelligence, it's run by people,
Yeah,
right? So people have their inherent gender norms that the patriarchy exists, and the patriarchy exists in such a way that it also puts down men, as I was saying earlier. So gender norms, for example, they will say, oh, this woman could literally be a drug addict, but she would still get custody of the children because she's seen as the
yeah,
nurturer of the family, and because women are generally historically seen as the nurturers, when in reality she's a drug addict, she never home, she never taking care of her and father. They also downplay the fact that a man could show love to his children. If a
exactly.
man shows love to his children, it seems
Yeah,
weird. And they
yeah,
start to sexualize the whole thing too. Say that,
yeah,
oh, this man is a molester. Literally, I've seen these things happening, and I'm just amazed. Like a man showing love, then the woman started to comment saying that he's molesting. That is very weird for him to be doing this with his children, hugging up his children a certain way. But if a woman does it to her son, it is
yeah.
not seen as weird.
Yeah, well, there are obvious, imbalances and perceptions in
Mm-hmm.
society. I must say, however, and this is a bit encouraging, this is the one area of the family court system that is encouraging, and that is there seem to be moving towards a default 50-50
Mm-hmm.
custody. And what happens is that would be the default, and based on the merit of the situation, as you mentioned, if the husband is a druggie or wife is a druggie, then they would adjust the custody percentage time to each parent. So that is one good thing I see coming out
Mm-hmm.
of this situation. But then you have, as you mentioned there, the imbalance goes to there are many men who live in their cars because they have to give up their home. Some of them who blood, sweat, and tears they took to build that home, and they have to give it up to the ex, and then live in their cars because they can't afford two places to pay mortgage or rent.
Marriage
Right.
is generally a full loss for men sometimes, when they divorce. Like, what's the real benefit for men in a marriage?
Yeah, it's incentivized against them because
Mm.
it's the only contract I know where if somebody breaks the contract, they get half of your stuff. I don't know of any other contract that I mean that
Yeah,
a bit
exactly.
symbolic again, but that in essence is what happens. I think there is a bit of a movement now because there are many men's advocates out there now, and I think the eyes of justice are being open to realize that men have been given the short end of the stick, and so there seem to be now it's going to take probably generations
Mm-hmm.
to realize to have its true impact, but it seems the tide is shifting a bit in favor of men. And when I say in favor of men, I don't mean that in some sort of nepotic way.
Mm-hmm.
It's more based on fairness that the
Yeah.
tide is shifting a bit towards men.
And I
So
think the youth have a big part to play in that because they are pushing and advocating for a lot of these things now. So that's why I always support youth development, and I
yeah,
help steer the youth because I do training for older persons, I do training for younger persons, and
right,
the different perspectives in both of them
yeah.
is it is a lot. It's a big gap.
Yeah, one of the areas that go I guess this is very controversial in society, and usually when it's raised, it creates a lot of angry outbursts, and that is the case of paternal fraud. And
Mm,
I've been watching some podcasts now. These are anecdotal. I don't have empirical evidence to support this, but I've been watching some podcasts from some people in the United States, and there was one particular case where this podcaster was interviewing a person who works in a lab, and part of the function of that lab is to determine the paternity DNA testing they do. And the person who was being interviewed said he left the job because he couldn't handle the pressures of knowing that there were in as much as 30 something percent of the cases that were looked at, the dad who was assumed to be the dad was not the dad. Now, he said that the toll it took on those men, plus even the kids that were involved, was too much. People were like, he couldn't handle it. He quit the job because it was so emotional, so distraught to be faced with a situation like that. But usually, when that topic is raised, it's met with some angry outbursts. And I believe in France, it's illegal to request paternity testing
mm,
unless the woman agrees, which again makes no sense because if she's at fault, she wouldn't agree to in the first case, right? But that's a major issue. Hopefully, at some point, they should make it mandatory at birth, so that everybody involved would be treated to a fair and just result, you know. And then all this, feelings, I feel bad and I feel you don't trust me and all of that should go out the window, because if you make it mandatory, that means everybody has to do it. But that is I would say at this stage hopeful wishing, hopeful thinking, but we'll see how things go.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hmm.
Now there's an area now usually, like when you go to the gym or you take some sort of magic pill, it may work, maybe for a month or two, you might lose the weight, but it would eventually come back. So, on that concept, how can we ensure that our efforts to support men and boys are sustainable and effective in long term? In other words, we don't want to do some sort of band-aid solution situation where it works for a couple months or maybe even a year or two, and then it's back to square one. So what can we do to ensure long-term
Yeah.
sustainability?
So, as I was saying earlier too, culture is the hardest thing to change. But in order to change it, we need persons like you, persons like Savam, we need persons like me, persons like Dr. Jerome Tilok Singh, to also just keep pushing and also have places like the United Nations
Yes.
recognize that men and boys are vulnerable too. Because the society, if you keep if women keep saying, oh, we are vulnerable, we are vulnerable, we are vulnerable, yes, you have your vulnerabilities, right? And this might be seem controversial. You have your vulnerabilities, but if you keep labeling yourself like that, you stick yourself within that category, we are always vulnerable.
Right.
You don't want that label to stay with you all the time. Now, the men are actually showing vulnerabilities and you're saying, no, that's not masculine to do. That's not a real thing. Men have been empowered, men have had power for the entire generations of life. But in reality, to answer your question, I think we as advocates, we are we taking our time to sit here and discuss these issues here today. We need more passionate people, and we are getting these passionate people, passionate young people, passionate older persons as
Right.
well to be in the space. And we are going to continue this push, just like the women's rights and all of these advocates did not happen overnight. It
Right.
took time. So the same thing with that is what we're doing for men and boys right now. It will take time, but it will change. It will change, and I believe within my generation still, within my lifespan, there's still I will see sufficient change, and I have been seeing it with the groups that I have been working with. Just a few, that was last week, I did a session for 300 young men,
Wow.
300 young men, and all of them were under the age of 18. And the impacts that I had for them, they came to me after, and they were talking about one thing. Well, they talk about many things, but one of the main things that stood out to me was suicide
Right.
and their mental health. And I was like, hearing them talk about all of the issues that they're going through and what is the next step. They don't know what the next step is. So they need more mentors, more
Right.
persons that are passionate about men development and not radical men, because we have radical male
Of
um,
course. Yeah.
that males that generally radicalize the meninist things,
Yeah.
and then that tends to make it look really bad on us because
Right.
they're attacking women, and we don't want to attack women. We want to develop
Yeah.
ourselves as men.
Yeah.
So it will take time to work on it. That's just
Yeah.
what I say. Just take time and passionate persons like you and I.
Exactly. And just to touch briefly on what you just mentioned there, there's this general misconception that when you advocate for men, you're trying to bring women down. It's not
Mhm.
a zero sum game. We here support women 100%. It's just that men and boys are so far behind. We're trying to advocate for them, but it's not any way our intention to bring women down or to that whatever we're doing would lessen their impact on society or their well-being. That's women when I say there. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now when it comes, I guess this is more of a futuristic thing. What emerging trends or issues do you see affecting men and boys in the coming years?
Hmm. Emerging. It is just, it's the same thing. The same thing that we're seeing now. More men and boys getting depressed. So that same thing, increasing suicides,
Right.
that same thing as well. And also a lack of job availability as well for men and boys in society.
Yeah.
So they don't know what they want to do. A lot of them, after the same 300 young men that I spoke to, they didn't know what they want to do because they lack any mentors in this space. Because also, we have men that are afraid to say that how they are advocating for men's rights and men's issues, because it have organizations, large organizations that see, when you say men's rights, they're like, what
Yeah.
madness you talking about?
Exactly.
Men have real rights.
Yes.
So that is why some men do not want to be mentors.
Yeah.
So therefore, the trends that I see it is suicide, more anxiety, more mental health issues for young men and boys, and
Right.
also the lack of jobs,
Yeah.
and also men and boys being vulnerable to being accused of things that they might not have been doing, because women have been empowered to say this and that and the other. As always, talk about the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp situation as well.
Yeah, well, one of the stumbling blocks there as we move forward is this idea that men are always on top. They don't have anything to worry about, and life is easy. They sit back, lighting cigars with $100 bill, and having all the fun
Yeah.
in the world. But again, one of the troubling factors involved here is, as you just mentioned, is there are people out there because of the fear of losing their job or reputation or whatnot, are afraid to speak the truth, and because it's going to ruffle feathers. And there, as you mentioned, also very powerful organizations out there that can make life miserable for you. So to a certain extent, I can understand people's reluctance to get involved.
Mm.
But it's I think when men suffer, society suffer, because men in a number of cases are the driving force behind the infrastructure and all of the ticking parts that make society work. Obviously, women have their role to play as well. I'm not trying to discredit that in any way. I'm just saying that if men have to move forward, we need to address some of the systemic problems that they face that can be overcome if we are more unbiased in our thinking and our approach to things. So, speaking of gender equality, how can we work towards gender equality that would benefit everyone, including men and boys, without undermining progress for women?
So that's a real good question, and I really wanted to discuss this too. Is that men and women, boys and girls, we are a team. We are all a team. We need to work together in order to end this thing called gender based violence, and also to create and advocate for two things: gender equality and gender equity. We cannot do it alone as men. Women cannot do it alone as women for
Yeah,
women. So we need to work together to create gender equality, to create, well, to advocate more for gender equality and gender equity. I
yeah,
am more leaning towards gender equity because we need to fit, because men and women are different. Equity is all about the different needs that men and women, boys and girls have. So we need to figure out what the different needs are, start to put our money where our mouth is, and start to budget it. So
yeah,
I believe that we, in order to achieve it, equality and equity,
yeah,
we need to work together as a team. Because for example, for me, I brought in one of the young CARICOM youth ambassadors to talk about the International Day of the Elimination of Violence Against Men and Boys. Her name is Samantha Rampasad, a young woman who has also realized that men and boys are vulnerable too. And she has been doing videos as well to promote the IDEVAMB, which is the International Day for the Elimination Against Violence Against Men and Boys. So she has been promoting that day, the 31st of January, as well. And I want to get her involved in World Day of the Boy Child as well. And she's also willing to do that. So she's a young woman. I'm a youngish, youngish guy. So I want to continue the advocacy at that level, but we also have older women and older men that need to work together because they realize the gaps need to be filled, and
yeah,
work together to address the issue of gender equality, true
yeah.
gender equality, and true gender equity.
the one thing with the equity is you have to sort of balance that with merit. It becomes a slippery slope if you don't
Mm-hmm.
take the right approach. So that's a bit of a dicey area. But again, I think the end goal is for, as far as gender is concerned, people should be treated fairly and, more importantly, given the opportunity. Now, there are, so-called male roles and female roles when it comes to jobs. Men seem to go towards STEM, fields like
Yeah.
engineering, whatnot, and women seem to go more to the social aspect of things. And I think, that, be that as it may, everyone should be given an opportunity. If there is an engineering job out in some outfield out in the North Sea or whatever, um, women should, if they want to do that job, they should have the same opportunity as a man. You know what I
So
mean?
as you mentioned that, sorry to interrupt, but as you mentioned that
Yeah.
I've done sessions with older persons and I've done sessions with younger persons, right? And I've asked them, so do you think a man could be a nurse in Trinidad?
Yeah.
The older generation was like, nah, no, the man nurse to have availability. Yeah. And then I always ask the same question to the youth. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
why can't why can't a man be a nurse and why can't a woman be an engineer?
Yeah, good thinking, and it's good. It's encouraging that the younger generation. I would encourage younger people, get past the stigma. Go out there. If you're a male and you want to be a nurse or whatever the case might be, go for it. If you're a female and you want to be, some sort of technical person, that is involved with, building bridges or
Mhm.
going out and drilling oil and all these different things. Get to it. Put your best foot forward and aim for success. And just don't fall in line with society's stigma about specific roles for men and boys and women and girls. So
Mhm.
get out there, and if something is in your heart and you want to do that, go for it. It's as simple as that. I'm gonna
Mhm.
read you now a quote of yours that I really liked, and
Mhm.
here it goes. With a deep appreciation for the natural world, I also enjoy exploring nature and sharing its beauty through videos, showcasing the wonders of our environment to inspire connection and build peaceful communities. Can you elaborate on this?
So all right. So I love Trinidad and Tobago, right? I love Trinidad and Tobago a lot. I love the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I love the food. Big up doubles. I love the
Yeah,
food of Trinidad and Tobago. Big up chicken roti. I love chicken roti. And
yeah,
I've also loved the nature that associates with Trinidad and Tobago. So all of these things, right? The people, the food, which is part of the culture, and then the nature. All of these things connect to show how good Trinidad and Tobago is as a small little, two little small islands
right.
that could show the rest of the world how good we are. We are good in terms of nature, we are good in terms of food, we are good in terms of culture, and the people are very nice. So that's how I look at it. Yeah, people might say we have high crime and things, but I tend to focus on the positives. And I do a lot of videos. I go out into hikes, I go out into beaches, just to show people that people always say, and when I go out to these hikes, I go out to these beaches, people always say, hey, why you going out by yourself there? You go get robbed. I've been going out by myself there all the time and I haven't been once. Once. Because it is this perspective, this negative perspective, this negative label
Right.
that Trinidad and Tobago is hell. It isn't. It isn't. It is. The people here are very nice. People and the culture is very nice. The food is very nice, and the nature is very nice. And
Yeah.
also the communities that we have.
Right.
There's always here that in Trinidad everybody know each other.
Yeah.
It always takes a community to build a child. I still believe that exists. Is you go and you ask one person, we call it a parlor. A
Yeah.
person in the parlor, right?
Yeah.
Hey, you know where Dipchand is?
Yeah. Yeah.
They will call you out from quite down so, and they will call you out.
Yeah, I get that. Obviously, being from Trinidad originally myself, I'm familiar with the way how things work, and yeah, it's I love Trinidad and Tobago to the hilt, and it's a place of beauty, of sharing, of love, of collaboration, and nature. You name it, you got it in this small twin island, which have done exceptionally well on the world stage, comparatively speaking, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I would encourage people to visit from time to time. It's worth the trip. Now
Yes.
we've running out of time. We have a
Mhm.
couple of questions, so we'll try to wrap up as quickly as we can. Um,
Time flies.
Time flies. So, on as a what final message would you like to convey to our listeners out there?
A final message. I would just say, when it comes to men's rights and men's issues, stay positive. Stay positive. It's a simple statement. Two words: stay positive. Particularly because we tend to realize we getting battled, we getting attacked as men. Why are you standing up for men's rights for? Stop that. And
Yeah,
when we keep getting all of them people throwing all of those negative things at us, we tend to stop. And a lot of people tend to stop and they just fold up themselves and say, all right, you know what is really worth it? It isn't really worth the fight, and just give up. Do not give up. Stay positive on the advocacy for men's rights, highlighting men's issues, and we will achieve what we have to achieve in due time. But patience is also another thing. So
right.
be positive and be patient, and also advocate to the best of your ability, whichever category, whichever issue that you see men and boys face the most. Try
Yeah.
to advocate for it. You have persons in the space that will connect it, and we will work with you as well.
I love that message, and that should echo around the world, as a matter of fact, because it's something that should stand as a sort of a staple to addressing the issues that men and boys face. So, thank you for sharing. Now, before we get to the final question, just a bit more information about our organization. We encourage people from all walks of life to get involved with us, join us in our daily we have a YouTube channel, we have other means of communication and collaboration that we would love to have, regardless of age, gender, nationality, whatever demographic you may fall in. We encourage you to be part of us. We have, first of all, we can give out some contact information here. A phone number is 226-289-8784. Email address is info@voiceofmen360.org, and our website is www.voiceofmen360.org. You can also find us on pretty much all social media. We are on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. Actually, we have a Facebook group page. You're welcome to join us, see our daily activities, and bring along some friends as well. We have a YouTube channel, Voice of Men 360. We would dearly love for you to at least tune in, see what we were about, and subscribe. We would appreciate that very much. So we're pretty much to the end of our program for today, unfortunately. So back to you, Richie. How can anyone learn about more about the work you do, including sharing your contact information?
Mhm. Well, I share my contact information with generally everybody, so you all could reach out to me via my WhatsApp. You could take my number as well. My number is, well, it's +1-868-732-1919. And you could also email me at Richie, Richie, dot Bansraj, Bansraj, at gmail.com. And you can also message me on LinkedIn. Just search Richie Bansraj on LinkedIn. You can message me, follow me there, reach out to me, see all of the activities that I would be posting there as well. And also, you could see me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Well, Facebook is Richie Bansraj.
Right.
And on Instagram is System Richie, at SYSTEMRICHIE. One word, and you can reach out to me. Don't be any stranger. Just let me know where it is that you get the number from, so I can know how to, converse. I try my best to respond as quickly as possible, but I have been working on it, right? I have been working on it. So WhatsApp me, and we'll definitely keep in touch.
Excellent, excellent. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you aboard, Richie. We
That's
really
great.
appreciate the time you've spent with us and the information you've imparted to one and all. So, thank you so much again for being an integral part of this show today. Thank you to our man behind the controls, Sivam, our president. You can't see him, but he's pulling all the strings, making things work as smoothly as possible. Thank you again, Sivam. And of importance, significant importance, is our audience out there. Again, we appreciate the time you've spent with us. Thanks for taking the time to do so. And to one and all out there, we want to wish you a good night, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. Thank you all from all of us here at Voice of Men 360. Goodbye.
Thank you all. Yes.